The New Orleans Pelicans were the biggest disappointment of the NBA bubble after many expected them to sneak into the playoffs as the Western Conference's 8th seed. Despite having what appeared to be an easy schedule, the Pelicans underwhelmed the entire way through and were eliminated from the postseason early. What's next for a team that has one of the best young stars in the league but is still missing so many pieces around him? You're watching Courtside TV, and this is a preview for next season's New Orleans Pelicans. Obviously, Zion Williamson is the future of this franchise. They will go as far as he can take them. But with most of his rookie season lost to injury and now with the fired coach, they seemingly don't have much of a direction as they continue to build around their young star. Williamson is absolutely electric when he's been on the court, and he's definitely proven why many people consider him to be one of the best prospects to ever come into the NBA. There are no questions about Williamson's game and his ability on the floor, but things get a lot more concerning when you look into his injury history. A player as big, athletic, and explosive as he is will sometimes have a hard time landing after a thunderous dunk, and that increases his risk of injury every time he lands on the court. It already happened with a torn meniscus this year and last season after he blew out his shoe at Duke. The training staff in New Orleans has a big job on their hands making sure that Williamson can shed weight and keep it off, revamping his landing mechanics, and just making sure that he knows what to do in order to avoid those injuries that have plagued him so far. He's an incredibly unique player. With his blend of size, skill, and athleticism, I've seen him make plays in his career so far that I've never seen any other player make in the NBA, past or present. Williamson will be a star in the league. It's just a question for how long. The way that his body is built and the way that he plays the game, how long can his career realistically be? 5 seasons? 10 seasons? There's no way to tell, but one thing is very clear, that Williamson will be an amazing player in the NBA as long as he can stay healthy. Brandon Ingram had his breakout season this year, being named to his first All-Star team and showing why those comparisons to Kevin Durant weren't so far off after all. For most of the year, the Pelicans were Brandon Ingram's team, but when Zion came back, they seemed to kind of struggle to adjust to each other being there. Do the Pelicans think that Ingram can continue to coexist with Zion Williamson as they both grow into the player that they will be eventually in their career? Ingram is a free agent this offseason, albeit restricted. He certainly will get a max offer sheet from some team. Will the Pelicans be willing to match that? Some have raised some questions, and I don't think they're necessarily unwarranted, but personally I would do whatever it takes to keep Brandon Ingram this offseason. He's already shown he can score with the best of them, and he doesn't play the same position as Williamson, so they can take turns being the lead guy depending on who's hot that night. He was a great number 1 option for them this season, and it stands to reason that he'd be a pretty good number 2. I do think the Pelicans will give him that max extension this offseason, and if there's chemistry problems down the line, they should have no problem trading Ingram to a team who would value him a little bit more. Now, Jrue Holiday is where it kind of starts to get interesting. He's been a great veteran mentor for the Pelicans this year, with his tenacious defense and his shot-making ability. Many expected the Pelicans to trade him last offseason before this year began, but it didn't end up happening, and it turned out to be a pretty solid move for them. He's certainly a player that lots of contenders would love to get their hands on, and I would expect there to be a strong trade market for him if the Pelicans do elect to move on. At 30 years old, he's a little bit outside of their timeline, so I would expect the Pelicans to at least consider moving on from him in the near future. He has 1 year plus a player option left on his deal for about $27 million per season, and so I would expect the Pelicans to shop that contract around and maybe get his money off the books. If they don't trade him though, that's okay too. He'll continue to play that Jrue Holiday brand of basketball with tough defense and that great veteran mentorship. I'm also interested to see what the Pelicans do with JJ Redick, who is entering the final year of his contract at around $13 million per season. He's getting up there in age, but his production has not slowed down. He's definitely the type of player that a lot of contenders would love to have, so I would expect there to be some strong offers for him this offseason, even if the Pelicans really don't want to move him. As I mentioned in my draft lottery video, he fits nicely into that Golden State Warrior trade exception for next season, so maybe they would be willing to throw an offer at the Pelicans. I don't think New Orleans will actively shop him around, but if they get an offer that blows them away, there's a chance that he gets dealt. And then you have a couple players like Lonzo Ball and Josh Hart. Hart has been a solid role player for the Pelicans and for the Lakers earlier in his career, and I think he's shown enough that he'll continue to be just one of those solid, off-the-bench players who can play good defense and hit the three-point shot. Lonzo Ball is definitely still developing, and after a poor showing in the bubble, many fans are questioning what his potential really is as a player in the NBA. He's definitely shown flashes at times, but there are times when he doesn't really belong on the floor. And so the Pelicans are going to have to figure out how much money they would be willing to pay Lonzo Ball when his extension comes up next offseason. Maybe he pops in the 4th year of his career, but he still has a lot to prove if he wants to live up to the hype that he had coming out of college. Now, the Pelicans do have a little bit of cap space next year, but I'm assuming that most of it will be taken up with that Brandon Ingram extension I mentioned earlier. Derek Favors is an expiring contract, and I wouldn't expect the Pelicans to go too hard trying to bring him back. I think they're okay with letting him walk and handing the keys over to Jackson Hayes as the team's full-time starting center. There will likely be another contender who will offer Derek Favors a little bit more money than the Pelicans are willing to pay, so I don't expect them to bring him back this offseason. They'll be happy to get E'Twaun Moore's money off the books as well. He's an okay player, but if he wants to come back for anything more than the minimum, I would definitely turn that down. Maybe a 1-year minimum deal if he would like to come back, but for the most part, I would say they're okay with letting E'Twaun Moore leave. And then you have all these guys down here at the bottom of the roster, guys like Jahlil Okafor, Frank Jackson, Sindarius Thornwell, and Kenrich Williams. None of them are going to be a high priority for them to bring back. I would anticipate maybe another 1-year deal for Jahlil Okafor, maybe potentially Kenrich Williams gets another chance. Maybe even Frank Jackson would get another 1-year offer, I'm not sure. But again, those are not going to be high priorities for the team this year. And they're more going to be focused on bringing in some veterans who can play minutes for them rather than young developmental projects. I would also expect the team to keep around players like Nico Melli and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Alexander-Walker is still developing, but he had a lot of potential and a lot of people were really excited about him in the draft. So I think they'll continue to develop him and let him grow naturally in his role. And then Nicolo Melli was a great shooter off the bench for them, and I would anticipate him to have a similar role as he did last season, just coming off the bench and instant offense, really. So honestly, the biggest step for the Pelicans to take is just continuing to make sure that Zion Williamson is healthy and developing. The future of this franchise rests on Williamson's shoulders. He's already shown enough to make many people, myself included, believe that he can be the #1 option on a title team. They've already got some good players around him, guys like Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and Josh Hart, who will surely be a part of the future of this franchise. If I was the Pelicans, I would continue going about finding players who can play around Williamson. He has a scoring partner in Brandon Ingram and a lob threat in Lonzo Ball. Throw in a quality wing defender and shooter like Josh Hart, and you've got a pretty good core. If I'm the Pelicans, I consider flipping players like JJ Redick and Jrue Holiday for younger players and draft picks. Perhaps they still want to remain competitive next season, and trading Jrue Holiday wouldn't necessarily allow them to do that. That's fine. I think another year of health and development for Williamson, assuming that he can keep weight off and continue to develop, along with another year of development for Brandon Ingram, makes them still a scary threat to make the playoffs next year, even if they do decide to trade Jrue Holiday. I just think they need to continue putting pieces around their young core, and players like Redick and Holiday don't fit with their timelines, so it might be in their best interest to trade them rather than letting their contracts expire and letting them walk for nothing. There certainly will be trade offers for those two players that the Pelicans shop them, so why not just do it? They're also going to have to find a new coach this offseason after firing Alvin Gentry. If it was me, I would go hard after Ty Lue as the next head coach of the New Orleans Pelicans. He's going to be a hot candidate in the coaching search this offseason for multiple teams, and I'm expecting him to get multiple offers. Because of his history with Pelicans general manager David Griffin from their time together in Cleveland, I would anticipate that would be an enticing factor for him to come to New Orleans. He's a good coach with championship level experience. He definitely deserves a head coaching position in the NBA, and if it was me, I think that the Pelicans should give him that chance. The Pelicans were underwhelming this season, but they still have one of the brightest futures in the league, and led by their young star, Zion Williamson, with complementary pieces in Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, and Lonzo Ball, they will have a chance to run the NBA in a few years. I still think they need more pieces around those guys, but they have avenues to get there. That's my thoughts on the New Orleans Pelicans and where their direction is going to be next season. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and next time we're going to be talking about the Philadelphia 76ers and what their future looks like after they were swept by the Boston Celtics in the first round of the playoffs. See you guys next time.